All right, guys, welcome to this new session. We will be focusing on provisioning Redshift. From our last video, we were able to perform all the transformation of both our text data and weather data, and we have all of them in Databricks, right? Which is being stored in S3, right? And so now we want to send this data to Redshift for business consumption, right? So now, before we can do that, we need to set up our Redshift. Okay, so for some of you that might be in an organization watching this video, some of this might have been provisioned for you, so you don't need to do this by yourself. But for some that maybe you want to set it up by yourself, then you want to go through this process. All right, now let's quickly dive into what we mean by setting up the Redshift. Okay, in our previous recording, we've already talked about how we would do Redshift, right? So let's quickly look at the S3. I've done some cleanup afterwards. So this is really our focus bucket. Right now we want to create S3. Now what we're gonna do is that we're not going to create it manually. We're gonna automate it. Okay, so if you want to get more information, check our video that we've done in the past where we went through the manual process, the GUI manual process of creating Redshift and making sure it's available for public connection. Okay, but today we're going to be using what we call the cloud formation. So we're going to be using infrastructure as a code to deploy this cloud formation. Alright, so basically we're gonna create a stack and then use that stack to deploy. Now before we do all of that, let me share with you what the infrastructure as a code looks like. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Alright, so when you look at this, right, so this is what the code look like. Okay, it's in YAML and this is what it looks like. So some of these we can definitely update. So we are at 2005 and then today is we are 11 say 08. Actually we just leave it as 11. All right, so that's the version. Okay, we can just put 08, that's fine. And then this is mainly for the description is only for S3 with public networking for Power BI access. And then we have some parameter we've set here. It's going to ask us, so we have this as master user, so we can change that as well. We can change this to let's call it DSP admin. All right, and then the password is going to ask us to put in the password. That's fine. And then we're gonna set up in the resources here. You can see we're beginning to set up the VPC which is needed, and we're calling this Power BI VPC. That's fine. Internet gateway, and also you see we have the attached gateway as well. My internet gateway, we can leave all of that in place. And then we also set in the public subnet, right? This is the CEDAR block, right? So that's great. And then we're calling it Power BI public subnet. And then we have the public route table. And if you look at this route table, we can see is referencing my VPC, is routing the table, and we have the default route here. You can see the destination CEDAR block. This is what it's showing, which means that any IP address can really connect to this particular network. Okay, and then also we are setting the route table, the subnet route table association. All right, and then we are setting up the subnet group, and we are setting it to allow Redshift to access from Power BI. Okay, and the port number is 5439. That's basically standard. And then this is also saying that it's open to any IP address. Okay, and then we are setting the subnet group, and then the Redshift role, the IAM role, we are setting as Redshift S3 access role. we're going to leave it as that. And then we're setting the cluster, okay, and then we will set the cluster to be R8 to be large single node, which is sufficient for our demo. And then the output here, we can see what we had there. So this is good. One thing I just want to change here is I'm going to change this to just Redshift access role. Okay, I'm going to see if this was not referenced anywhere in this code. I don't think so, but let's just double check. Okay, that's the only spot. Okay, so that's great. So we've adjusted a few things. I'm gonna save it, and that's what the code look like. Okay, so let me pull this away. All right, let's pull this away, and then that's what we're gonna use right now to be able to deploy our code. Now that we have the code ready, so let's create a stack. We're going to create with new resources. All right, choose an existing template. Yes, upload a template file. So we're going to upload. So let me upload that file. I'm going to just drag and drop. All right, and then I'm going to click on next, and okay, something is wrong. Let's try again. It wants us to get back to that same date that we had before. That's fine. So let me just quickly change that on my other screen here. So we need to leave it as the version. Okay, I'm going to share that with you so that you can also, if you have similar error, you can work your way around. So we need to leave the format version. Okay, we need to leave the format version, right? So you can see that's why it's not able to take that code. So we're going to save it again, and then we're gonna drag and drop the file again. So this time around it should work. Okay, that's fine. So then we're gonna still call it DSP. We just call it, let's call it Redshift. Redshift, we missed that one. Redshift DSP demo. Okay, all right, so we're gonna put you can see this is what we are set in our code, DSP admin. So we're just gonna put in my own code here. You can feel free to use your own code as well. Oh, okay, we need to set, okay, let's just put like a dash and a dash. It doesn't like the space, so let's try that, see if it works. Okay, it's not complaining, so that's great. So we're gonna click on next, and one last thing you have to do is that you just select this acknowledgement, and basically going to create the appropriate IAM role. Okay, and that's it, it's good to go. And then we're gonna submit this, and we're just gonna wait for it to really complete the process. So let's click on it. All right, so once we click, we can take a look at the event. We can see my VPC and the Redshift. You can see they are all being created. It should be fast, so we're just gonna wait for all the resources to get deployed. And we can also double check here, right? So we are focusing on Redshift in this particular setup. So let's type Redshift. So we go there, and let's click on Redshift so that we can see what's going on. All right, so we can see it's basically creating a cluster, right? It's creating a cluster, and it's not completed yet, but that's what that stack is doing. Okay, so let's go back and make sure it's completed. It's still gonna take some time, so we're just gonna wait for it. Okay, the other things just to bear in mind is that once So while we are waiting for it, let's take a look at some of these that has been completed. You can see the subnet group has been completed, the route table has been completed. um, uh, let's see. So we can see the VP has been completed. So let's take a look at the VPC, for example. So basically you can type in VPC here just to make sure, and you should see I don't have any VPC I was running currently before the recording of this video. So you can see it's showing it's available. If you click on this VPC, you're beginning to see the route table. You can see the subnet is created, the network configure connection is also created. This is the internet gateway for the public. So we can see that is all created. That is great. So let's go back to our cloud formation and take a look again, see where we are at. Okay, this is still in process. Look at events. Let's refresh, make sure it's still in process. We can see. So we also take a look at Redshift again. Let's see where it is. Just refresh. Okay, showing not available. That's okay. So it's gonna be available, right? But at this point, instead of us just waiting, and please feel free to go over, when you look at those code, there are different resources that we expect to be deployed. So feel free to go back and take a look and make sure they are available in your tenant. When I mean tenant, I mean in your own console, and then that way you can confirm that it's working as expected. Okay, now, oh beautiful, you can see it's completed, so we are good to go. So let's refresh. Should be good now. The status should be okay. Sometimes it takes time even after completing for the status to be available. That's fine. So a few things we can have a look here. Cluster details, we can just take a look, and then we can look at query monitoring. A few things we can look here, but this is not a video to really dive deep into Redshift itself. But what we'll be interested here is just the properties. Okay, we can see a database name has been created, and we can also see the port. We can see the username. We'll need all of that. And let's just try to go to the query editor. So we usually use version 2. So click on the query editor just to make sure that it's working as expected. So again, just ignore some of these that I have already. It just keep my my last queries, so that's fine. So yours, you may not have any new tab. Don't worry about it. Just click on the plus sign, and then you should be able to start your own tab. Okay, and then here you can, because you won't be able to access anything, it will ask you for permission. So usually you just create I'm wondering if it will allow this time around, but usually you just create edit connection. All right, and then it will ask you what database you can see it's not so that means it's not allowing you. That's what I expect. So we can say, okay, which database. I say, okay, I'm using Power BI DB, and then this one we call it DSP. Remember, we call it DSP admin when we set it up, and then we're just gonna put in the admin password. Okay, you can put your own password that you had before. That's why it's important to make sure that you save your password. Okay, please don't lose your password, otherwise you have to recreate the cluster again. Okay, now I'm successfully signed in, and it's showing me, okay, Power BI Redshift cluster. That's the cluster I'm using, and it's also showing the database I'm on, which is good. All right, so now we can just have a look at the sample data, so we can see it's set up correctly. We're going to run some queries, and then we didn't put in sample data. Okay, that's fine. So what we're going to then do is let's run some queries. Let's create a new schema. Okay, a new database. Actually, we're going to create a new database. Just give me 1 second. So we're gonna run some query just to make sure that it's working as expected. So to create a database, we just use create. All right. Create, and then we do database. All right. And then we call the name of the database. In our case, we want the database to be New York City underscore taxi. Okay, feel free to give it whatever name you want. If you are working in an organization, whatever the naming convention is, just make sure you follow that completely. Okay. All right. So let's run this, and we should see our. So let's run that. Beautiful. You can see our database has been created. Okay. Now let's refresh. Sometimes you may need to put in the username and password again, but I think it should be fine in this case. So let's look at that. Okay, beautiful. You can see we have our database. Now we don't have any schema apart from the public. Now let's create a schema. We're going to comment out this one, and then we're going to create schema, and then we call it, let's see, we're gonna make sure we properly reference the database itself, and then we'll give it the schema name. So in this way, we want to call the schema gold New York City. Okay, gold New York City. We could also just call it gold, but in our case, we want to call it gold New York City. Yeah, let's change the name. Actually, thinking of this name, let's call it gold gold taxi. Gold taxi. uh, uh, okay, let's call it New York City. Let's call it New York City. That's fine. And then we run it, and let's leave it like that. So we have New York City taxi, gold New York City, and the reason why we are keeping that is just because under this New York City taxi, we're gonna have a couple of data, right? So and then so we just want that to have the proper naming convention. Again, this is just for demo. In the real life, you will have your proper naming convention that you really need to follow. Okay, so this is good. Let's comment these out, and then let's create a table. Now I have a query I have currently, and I'm gonna walk you through the query. So we're just gonna have this, okay, and then we're gonna create this table, right? Within the table, you need to specify your data type. So these are the columns: date, trip count, average fare, total revenue, temperature max, minimum temperature, precipitation in millimeter, and the rainfall category, right? So we have to specify the data type. Very key, because that's one of the advantage we have in a data warehouse. Okay, and then also you notice here that we reference the database, the schema, and then the table. Okay, so please make sure, otherwise it will default to the Power BI DB that is a default database. Okay, so that's why we need to be very, or we can specify here as well, if we want, and specify, actually we can specify here and specify the exact database you want. Okay, but because we didn't specify here, we're specifying within the code, it will work fine. So let's run that, and then it should be fine. All right, and by the way, if you really just don't want to click on the run button, you can just use Control and Enter, and it should work. Okay, all right, now that we have done all of this, let's double check, and then we can stop here for now. Okay, now let's just double check, make sure that our database, this is the database we had, this is the schema, and then this is the table. Beautiful, beautiful. You can see it's working quite well. I'm sure you have really enjoyed this. Please feel free to subscribe, share, and like, and then and let me know in the comment what you think, and please feel free to give us some feedback. We'd like to hear from you. All right, With that, I will say thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video where we'll be talking about moving data from Databricks into Redshift. This is exciting. I'll see you in the next one.